Hello, everyone. I think we are live, right? Sarfraz, can you please confirm if we are live? Perfect. All right, so I think we can start. And first of all, I want to thank all of you who are joining this session. This session is all about using Jira for a very simple use case, but uh, I wanted to still present it and talk about it because recently I was working with a client, and that client was using Jira, or they are starting to use Jira for doing a lot of things in their organization. It is like a big organization, and they wanted to use Jira for a specific team, and that team wanted to plan their events. Now, when it comes to events, uh, of course, there are a lot of things that we can do, but the main thing that they wanted to do for their event management or their upcoming event was to plan the communication around those events. Now, in this session, I will not really show you any slides. I will jump directly to Jira, or even before Jira, I will show you or I will talk about what I'm going to present. So it's a very hands-on session. Uh, and hopefully you can relate to what I'm going to talk about. So just to give you some background about what I do, my name is Ravi Sagar, in case you haven't noticed already. I run a company called Sparksys Solutions. Now, this company, Sparksys Solutions, is an Atlassian uh, consultancy company. We are based in London and also in Delhi. We do, of course, a lot of things, but our main specialization, our core, our strength, our interest is in automation. So we do a lot of work around automation. We do a lot of work with the script runner for Jira or connecting Jira with other tools. And apart from all this, we also spend a lot of time working on EasyBI. So this is our niche. So talking about today's session, perfect event communication planning. What I will do first, I will start with this beautiful diagram. And this beautiful diagram is nothing but my notes. So whenever I work with my clients, because I'm a consultant, my responsibility, my job is to help my clients get the most out of Jira. And I try to create some visual. So Rodney, you don't see our screen. Let me just try. Can you see it now? I can see one diagram, if you can confirm. I'm looking at the chat, by the way. Let me know if you're not able to. Can you hear me? If you can just type Rodney, if you can hear me. Perfect. Great. Thank you. So, okay, so we are, okay, perfect. Thank you. Thank you very much. So, so let us start. So I was talking about this beautiful notes of mine. And what I will do today, I will try to first give you some background of what I did for this client. Now, for this particular client where I was working on this event management, event communication planning work, we basically started with an epic. Now, we are using epics here because epics can be then broken down into several smaller set of activities. And what we will do in Jira, we will create a simple epic, and this epic will be for one event. Let us say there is an event that you want to plan or the work that you need to do for that particular event in the month of October or November. Let us say there is a new event in October. Now, for doing that event, you need help from different teams, right? Now, let us say to work for the event, you need help from the graphics team. Now, graphics team will do graphics work. They will create the banners. They will create a YouTube thumbnail. You might need to write content. So you will definitely need help from the editorial team, and you might also need help from a team that would do the translation. So the idea here is that whenever you have a big piece of work that you need to do or deliver, you will create activities for these other teams to help you to support your in this case event or this October event or whatever event. Now the thing is that when you do this in Jira, of course you can create an epic, and then of course you can manually break down your epic, or you can create stories or tasks under your epic, right? So this can be done, of course, manually. Now what we did for this client is we tried to identify things that are happening all the time. Now, what we figured out by, of course, spending time with the client was that whenever there is a new event or whenever there is a specific event that needs to be planned, they do these activities on a regular basis. So it is part of their process. And there is a process, there is a well defined process. And of course, we used Jira's workflow to define the flow. But at the same time, because they were doing the same set of activities over and over again, we automated some parts of it, not really everything. Now, when we create a new epic in Jira, of course, you can capture different details, like what would be your event name, what would be the event date. And based on these details that we capture, we are actually doing and helping the automation to create the task only when they are required. For example, maybe for some of the event planning work, you don't really need a translation, or maybe you don't really need to send a newsletter. So we actually used this information. We captured this information early on in the epic creation stage, or maybe whenever you are modifying the epic, then we use this information to create the task only when it is required. Now, talking about the overall flow of the epic. So this is the workflow, and I know it is not really a Jira workflow, but this is something that I use normally to capture the process. And this workflow or this process is something that I will very quickly explain, and then of course we'll jump to Jira and we'll see how it works in reality. So basically, whenever there is a new event that needs to be started, or basically the work for a new event that needs to happen, they will create a new epic for it, and it will go into a stage called as a draft or concept. You can call it whatever you want, maybe a backlog. Now this backlog or this draft state is used in a Kanban board where they can actually store all the upcoming events that they want to start working on, or they maybe have plans to work on. And then whenever there is a new event, we of course create a new epic for it, and then that particular epic will proceed further. Now the next stage is nothing but a stage where they start the planning work, and the planning work actually means for this client is that they create a package, and that package basically consists of what images that they want to create, what content they want to share or write, whether they need to do translation. So so there is a package, and this package is nothing but different files or different uh, things that they have to finish for the event, and then that particular package was sent to another team called as editorial team, and that team would of course review the content, and there is also one more level of approval that is required. So we are actually using a simple condition in the workflow to check who can approve. Now the main thing is that whenever we create a package, or whenever we move the status, or whenever we make a transition from draft or concept to package created state, we actually want to create some activities automatically, some task automatically. So if you notice, if you look at this workflow, we are basically, it's a simple workflow, nothing too complicated. We are actually moving from one stage to another stage. For example, once the package is approved, it will then move to another team, and they will of course do their set of work. So the whole idea behind this process in Jira is to basically create activities for other teams. Now, if I go back to the original list, we are basically creating, or we are basically focused on this event. Now, this event epic is actually dispatching work for other teams. So we are actually using a separate project for only the epic and nothing else. And then because we want help from other teams, we are actually creating stories or tasks for the graphics team, the translation team, or social media team. And because it is an epic, in Jira, whenever you create a new epic and whenever you have stories or tasks under it, it will all display nicely. And of course, we can track the overall progress of the epic. And whenever we proceed further in the workflow, we are actually creating, not always, but wherever required, some tasks automatically. And we are also doing a bit of calculations. For example, if the event is on 15th of November or 31st of October, then the due date of some of these activities, like graphics, thumbnail, or content editorial, should be 2 weeks or 3 weeks prior to the event date. And this is, of course, very simple in Jira because we can do this without using any app. We can use automation rules, and that is what I did. I will show you how it works. But there are few things that we have to, keep in mind when we are using automation rules, because when you move from one stage to another stage, you can definitely trigger the automation rule to create more activities, but you don't really want to create the same activities again. So you can actually check in your automation rules whether these tasks that you're creating are already there or not there. If those tasks are already there, don't create. So you can write automation rules, but at the same time, to not create the same task again or to avoid confusion, add some checks in your rule. And I'll show you briefly how it looks like. And when we proceed further in this workflow, we are basically just using standard Jira workflow with transitions and creating these tasks. And the overall diagram, if you look at the whole diagram here, you can see here that the epic workflow or the event project where we are planning the uh, epic for the event communication, we are dispatching the work. So it's a very simple way of working. And I will, of course, show you how we did this in Jira and how it looks like in Jira. If you're new to Jira or if you're thinking of doing something similar in Jira, hopefully this session will help you. And this example, this use case is, of course, for event communication, but you can also use this for doing something similar. Maybe you are doing some cross project collaboration, and maybe if you have like a very defined process, it could be any process to be honest, but whenever it comes to like avoiding manual task, if you know that for sure you need to do these things all the time and you need to do this all the time, maybe you need help from other teams, you can actually create these tasks for them. So let me jump to Jira very quickly, and I'll give you a demo of how this all looks like in reality. So let us go to Jira. So this is my Jira dashboard. I'll come to the dashboard because, to be honest, this is a very simple dashboard, nothing too complicated. I will start with the event project. Now, this event project is basically nothing but a simple Kanban board. Now, I also want to give you some context and background. Now, when I first started working with this event communication planning team, they were keen to use Jira Work Management, because if you have ever used Jira Work Management, I'm sure you know that Jira Work Management is actually very simple to use. Jira Work Management has, of course, a roadmap view, a time. I think it's called as timeline view, but it also has a list view, a calendar view, and it is very simple. You can do inline editing, but there are some limitations when it comes to Jira Work Management because you can't really easily create your own customized columns. That is what we have done here. Because in Jira Work Management, I think whenever you have, if in your workflow, if you have 10 statuses, those 10 statuses will appear as a column. And it is not really ideal. And that is why we started with the Jira software, a simple Kanban board. And we are also now thinking of using the Jira Kanban board's backlog view, which I will talk about later. So what I will do, I will create a new epic for a new event that we need to plan. So let us say there is a new event happening in maybe November. So I'll just type here November event planning. And when you create a new epic in Jira, you can, of course, select other fields if needed. For example, for this particular client, they have a requirement where they need to have some predefined text or some kind of a format. So it is, of course, not massively easy to do it using native capabilities. I know on Jira Data Center, you can, of course, have something like behaviors, for example. I know there is something similar on Jira Cloud, but this is actually one of the requirements that they want to have some predefined text. So imagine that there is a text here so that people can fill it up. But because majority of their documents are in Teams, they use SharePoint for their content, like whenever they have to write a content or any write-up. So we actually used a plugin to integrate Jira with Teams. I'm not really going to show you how it works because uh, that is not really what I want to focus on. I actually want to focus on the automation part and the workflow. But because there are plenty of apps that are available right now. What you can do with the help of that particular Teams integration, that app, you can actually once it is connected, you can actually just browse your files from within Jira, and it will show you what you have, the content of the files, or not the content, but the actual list of files from your SharePoint. So let us create the epic. And before I create the epic, I basically want to fill in this due date. Now this event is happening, let us say on 30th of November. Now what we want to do for this particular event, we also want to capture whether for this particular event planning, we need translation to happen, whether we need to share this content or the communication should go on YouTube or other platforms. So there are different options. And what we are doing here is we are using simple select list, multi-select list, because based on these options, we want to create this task for the right team. So this is something that we can do very easily. It is, of course, just one example. You can also do it somewhere in the automation rule because you can, but at the same time, we want to make it a bit more conditional so that we will only create the task based on these selections here. Now, for this particular example, I will probably select all the options because I want to show you how it works. And I'll also show you the rule, by the way. So let me create the epic. And the moment you create a new epic, of course, this epic will land somewhere in your backlog. Now, if you're new to Jira, if you have never really used Jira or if you have never really tried this, what you can also do, because in your backlog or the Kanban board, your number of issues can become too long. Basically, this backlog column can be a huge column, right? Like you can have like hundreds of issues. Now, what you can do is if you go to your column settings, there is a very nice feature in Jira Kanban board. And now, of course, we also have the enhanced boards in Jira. So you can actually go to your columns and you can map your backlog status or draft status, in my case, to a Kanban backlog. So basically, you will get something like a Scrum backlog view where you can select or where basically your backlog will sit outside your Kanban board, and only when you decide that you want to work on this particular epic or whatever issue, only then it will appear in your board. So this is something that we will most likely do for this client because now their backlog is getting too big. Now for this particular epic, what I want to do, and by the way, before I show you the epic, before I proceed further in the epic, there is also this timeline view where as a whole you can visually see the epics or whatever work that you're doing, at least at the epic level. So this timeline view is of course wonderful. And of course you can change the dates from here if you want, but I'll not do that. I'll go back to the Kanban board. Now what I want to do, I will open this epic because I want to show you how it looks like when we start working on the epic. So there is a new event that we want to, we actually want to start working for this event. And at the same time, you can see here that there is a workflow. Now this workflow is something similar to what I showed you on that, big, nice, wonderful diagram. So there is a very simple workflow. And as you can see in this workflow, I'll probably just very quickly, walk you through. So every new epic will go into a draft status, then it will go to a selected for development status because you may want to, as I mentioned, if you want to separate your draft or a backlog from the Kanban board, you can. You can actually have a backlog view. So there are two statuses, and then you create a package. The package will be reviewed by someone like a team, and we are calling it as a first level review. Then it will also go through one more level of approval, and then finally it will be finalized. So once this package is finalized, it actually means that you have worked on the graph, you have worked on the content, you have also reviewed it, and now you want to start the work. And when you move the epic to the in progress status, then we create different, like another set of activities for other teams to work on. And finally, we also want to do something that will happen after the event has happened. For example, when you update something on the website, maybe you have like a banner on top of your website, you want to maybe take it down after the event. So there are some post-production activities that will also happen. So again, this workflow is not really complicated. It's a very simple workflow, but because this team, I think I forgot to mention, this team was using Excel sheets, was using emails and Asana. And because they were using different tools, of course, it was difficult because there were different tools involved. But at the same time, there was no well-defined process. Of course, there is a workflow now in Jira, and this is something that we do quite a lot. And this is something that we also experience a lot because whenever we start working with a client, and if they are not using any tool at all, moving to Jira is not really about using the tool. It's also about looking back or looking at their way of working. And now, because we have a Jira workflow, everyone know that, okay, we have to follow this path. So now they have a process, like a well-defined process. Okay, so let us proceed further. What I will do, I will move the epic to this status called selected for development. And as a good practice, I personally prefer whenever, not always, but usually, whenever you are moving from one state to another state, don't just make the transition like instantly. It is always good to capture some, additional information, like a comment, for example. So I'll add a comment here. Let us start, and I'll probably just tag someone. Maybe I'll just tag myself and select it for development. So nothing will happen right now because it is just the initial state transition. Now the main thing that will, or the automations will start, coming into picture when we create a package. So when we create a new package here, what will happen? And by the way, I'm not really showing you my client's Jira instance because I can't. Usually, when they create a new package or whenever they start the work on the package, they will actually have links to the SharePoint, and that actually is using the app. And with the help of that app, you can actually, browse your files very easily. So let us start the work, and I'll create the package. And the moment you create a new package, create a new package, it will create some activities, some initial activities, not really all the activities. I'll just do a refresh of my Jira instance of my Epic, and hopefully we'll have some activities. So now you can see the moment we create a new package, at this stage, we want people to just start working on the graphics. We also want to work on the content, and these activities are actually getting created in different projects. So you can see here that we have this. Thanks, Ajit, for the thumbs up. So we have this task called graphics task in a graphics project. Now, before I proceed further, I just want to show you a few things, and I'll also show you the automation rule. So first of all, uh, you can see here that if you go to the uh, graphics project, and by the way, these new features in Jira, they are wonderful because it was not there, to be honest, earlier, but now you can actually have these pop-ups that will appear if you hover your mouse on top of your issues, and it actually helps a lot. For example, the moment I hover my mouse over graphics, it will show you the priority and the status, and it is wonderful. I love this. So let us open this task, and if you go to this task, graphics task, you can see here that the event title has been copied, and you can also copy few other things like maybe other fields, but I personally prefer not to copy things or duplicate things. Ideally, it should be a link. For example, if you're working in a graphics project, you may have other work to do. Maybe you are working for some other teams, or maybe you are given some work from other teams. But at the same time, because we want to build this hierarchy or build this consolidated view, you can see here that if you're doing this work for November event, we can see that the epic link is there. So using the automation rule, you can of course populate the epic link. At the same time, the most important part here is the due date. Now remember, the due date for the epic was, I think, 30th of November or 31st, but now the due date is 16th of November, because as part of the process, we need to have graphics completed uh, by this date, or basically 2 days, not 2 days, 2 weeks prior to the event. And the same thing is also happening for the copywriting task. And we are simply creating a task, not really a story, because it is not really agile way of working. It's more about creating a task. And the same is also happening here. We are copying the summary from the epic for the event, and we are also populating the due date automatically, which is, I believe, -3 weeks or 4 weeks, something like that. So let me go back to the event. And before I go any further in the workflow, let me show you the automation rule. So for the automation rule, I'll just, and by the way, in case you don't know about this command palette, it is wonderful. You can press Control K, and it will bring up this wonderful, pop-up where you can do things like, let us say you want to go to automation rule. So you can just do it very quickly. So this is lovely. All right, so let us take a look at the automation rule, and I want to show you a few things that are hopefully helpful. So the first thing that I want to talk about is the rule that is, that is basically the first rule uh, to create a new package. So if you look at this particular rule, we are uh, triggering this rule whenever we move from selected for development state to package created state. Now the thing is, I don't really want to create this rule, or I don't really want this rule to trigger more tasks when we go back to selected for development, because usually in the workflow, people may want to go back to the previous state. And when you create a new task, for example, in this case, I'm creating a new task in the graphics project. At the same time, I'm copying the summary from the original epic, and you can do that very easily using smart values. In this case, it is trigger issue.summary. In case you are not familiar with smart values, I highly recommend you to search on Google smart value uh, Jira, and you will come to know about different things that you can do. For the due date, we can do a bit of calculation. For example, in the original epic, we have a due date. And at the same time, because we have a due date, we can do something like minus weeks 2. So this is something that you can easily do. And by the way, you can also do the same thing with it can be minus 2 calendar weeks, or I think you can also do business working days. So you have options, by the way. And the most important part is the epic link, because we want that story or task or an issue to be created under the original epic. So this is actually very important. Now, because we don't really want the rule to create the same task again, there are different ways of doing it. The way I normally do, and it works, is to simply check whether in that particular epic, if you have stories or if you have any existing issues, just check for this matching JQL. For example, something like basically you have to check if uh, uh, if the condition is none match specified JQL. So the thing is that if there are already some issues under that particular original epic, it won't really create the same task again. Just to avoid duplication. You can maybe do a bit more conditioning here if you want to maybe check for a specific story or a task. You can actually have multiple if else, but it is of course a bit cumbersome. I just write it in one go using or, and it works. It works in most cases. So this is something that I normally do whenever I create a task automatically. So let us go back to the original issue, original epic. I will proceed further in the workflow. Now, before I proceed further, I may want to, just change the status of the graphics task. Maybe the graphics task is done. I'll just change the status to maybe, done and something like that. And when I was working with my client, they actually wanted to automate it uh, a bit more. For example, they wanted to make sure that you should not be able to proceed further in the workflow if the tasks under it are not really done. And they also wanted to automatically update the Epic status based on the status of these issues under it. So potentially it can be done, but I normally prefer, based on my experience, that you should actually PM it. I mean, don't really expect Jira to automate everything, because you won't be able to. I mean, you can think about all the use cases, but sometimes there are some edge cases, and it is always better to have some someone like a project manager or a scrum master to make sure that these things are up to date. So when you're happy with all the tasks that are supposed to be done are done, you can of course proceed further in the workflow. And the next stage is first level approval. I'll just click on the button. Could you please approve it? So you can send it for first level approval, then you can also send it for second level approval. And by the way, when I'm doing these approvals, I'm just showing you very quickly because I have all the rights. But using your conditions in the workflow, you can check if the person who is doing the approval is in the right group, or not a group, but a role or not. So let us uh, let us approve it. And now I want to send it for one more level of approval from the editorial team. And because I'm doing these approvals, we actually want to not only ask people to approve it, but at the same time, we want to create more activities, more tasks for other teams. For example, the most important team is the copywriting team. And this copywriting team is basically doing all the work around the material. And I'll just show you very quickly how this copywriting uh, project or board looks like. So if I go to the copywriting project, I'll just open their Kanban board. And this team, this different team, is not only doing event work, they are also doing other work. Basically, they are responsible for their own set of activities, but at the same time, because they get a lot of work from other teams, the way we, because this team came from a different tool, Asana and Excel and emails, along with, of course, Teams notifications, they wanted to have very clear visibility of whether this particular work is for event planning or not. And at the same time, uh, even for the event planning work, they have like different categories, like whether this is a marketing related work or PR related work. So we simply created swim lanes for them. Now, when we create a swim lane here, we actually have to do it based on some field, right? Uh, there has to be some field updated somewhere in your task so that we can create a swim lane out of it. And the way we did it was to use components. Now, because the copywriting team, broadly what they do, or whatever they do, their work is divided into different categories, and their work is divided based on editorial, marketing, PR, or something else like ad hoc work. So basically, when we create a new work item for them, we are updating a component automatically using, again, automation tool. So if you look at this particular task, you can see here that we are creating this task for them under the original epic, but at the same time, there is a component which we are populating. So this is something that you can again do using automation tool. If I have to show you automation tool very quickly, I'll just go to the automation tool. And the rule that I want to show you is the rule which is getting triggered when I believe we do the editorial review. So basically, when you create a task, you have the option to also update the component. And because these things are super easy when you're using automation tools, you just need to make sure that there is the right component is already there, and you can just select it from the drop down. I do these things using a script runner for Jira, and of course, it is not difficult using script runner for Jira if you know how to do it. But at the same time, because Jira Cloud has automation tools, and these automation tools are simple to use, but at the same time, if you know how to use these tools along with smart values, and if you have used these tools with different use cases, you will get creative. So I highly recommend you to try automation tools as much as you can, not only for the sake of it, but you can actually cover a lot of those use cases on Jira Cloud as well. So let us go back to the Epic. And what I want to do right now is I just want to show you the last thing, the most important thing, and that is the creation of more tasks based on these fields, or basically these field values. Now, remember I talked about these different tasks that we need to create. So far in our Epic planning or our event planning, we are, of course, working on the graphics and editorial and review. But when it comes to the actual event communication, we actually want to send people a newsletter. We actually want to send or update uh, the website along with uh, sending some updates on the website along with the Twitter, YouTube. So there are a lot of activities that involves, and that is actually the key, like the communication part. And the way we do it is, of course, using these fields. If these fields, or if this particular field task to create is filled in, then we create this task. Otherwise, not, because for not for all the events, not for all the epics, we have to create translation or newsletter. It is selective. So let me show you how it works. And I also want to show you one more thing in the automation rule. Hopefully you will find it useful. So I will basically click on this status called as, or make this transition called as package finalized. This is again telling everyone that for this particular event, we are done with the content, we are done with the graphics. Now let us start the communication. And we are using these statuses because we want to report on it. Because for this particular team, event communication team, they want to visualize somewhere on the dashboard for all the upcoming events, the status. And these statuses are important for them to report on. Now, when I click on the start progress, at this stage, we are actually going to create more activities based on the selection here. So I'll probably wait for a couple of seconds. I'll just now do a refresh of this particular epic. And you can see here that now we have a lot more activities that are getting created. Now, if you go back to the diagram, the original diagram, I was talking about this process, and this process is, of course, creating a task, but we are not really creating the task in one go. We could have initially created all these tasks early on, but the thing is that you won't know, like whether you want to create a translation task or whether you want to send a newsletter. You might not know this information early on, so you need to wait for the package finalized state to be able to figure out whether these tasks are needed or not. And as you can see on the left hand side, we have plenty of activities, we have plenty of tasks, and these tasks are actually created for different teams. So uh, not just graphics team, but there is a separate project for website, because there is a team who is working on updating the website. There is a separate team who is working on translation. There is a separate team who is working on social media task, and so on. So this is something that we decided early on, that we will create these activities in different projects. And the thing is that although we are working on one epic and multiple tasks under it, but at the same time, there are other ways to visualize it in one go. Imagine if you're using Jira Premium, you have advanced roadmaps, or if you are using some other apps, there are plenty of apps that can actually visualize the hierarchy. Imagine this view where you have all the epics, and under those epics, you have all the tasks for different teams. Advanced roadmaps can do it nicely. There are other apps, visual apps that can do it. For example, EasyBI can do this. But the thing is that you have to work on the structure first. You have to work on this epic and different tasks for different teams in different projects. Now, what I want to show you is this particular task for updating the website. Now, again, going back to the automation rule, we are doing the same thing. We are making sure the website update task has the epic name, and there is also this epic link filled in, and possibly a due date if there is a due date required. But we're also creating a subtask under it. So you can see here that if you have a well-defined process, if you know that your team is going to do the same set of activities all the time, not only you can create a task, but you can also create a subtask under it. And everything is linked. So you have these subtasks. Let us say you want to update the website slider. Now, this website slider is actually assigned to a specific person. And if it is not a specific person, you can actually assign it to a specific maybe you can use a component lead, and the component lead then of course can triage it. But the thing is that you are actually going to a very low level, or breaking down your epic into task and even subtasks. So this is something that automation rules can do very nicely, and I'll show you uh, in just a second how this looks like, in case you have never really used automation rules to create a subtask along with or maybe under an epic. This could be a good use case. So the rule is this one: create task in progress. And this is the most complex rule, because we are checking here whether we already have those tasks under an epic or not. If not, then proceed further with these task creation. For example, when you create a new task, you are actually referring to the trigger issue, which is basically your epic, the epic that you initially started working with. But when you create a subtask, there is something called as a branch rule. Basically, you can tell your rule that create a subtask under the most recently created issue, which is of course the task for the website updation. And my client was also asking me that for my subtask, or when someone is looking at a subtask, how do we know for which event or for which task or epic this particular subtask is under? So basically, uh, it is of course a bit of training, because when you're looking at a subtask, you can of course look at the parent, and when you go back to the parent, you can also go back to the original epic. But when it comes to a subtask, you may want to copy at least the epic name if you have to, or maybe at least the or at least some information, so that it is easy for the users. But don't really copy each and everything, because the original epic should contain the most up-to-date details of your epic or of your event planning. So this is all I wanted to show you today in this session. And as you can see, this use case is not very complex technically. Basically, it's all about using Jira And because this client of mine was not super keen in using automation, or I should say not automation, but too many automations along with different apps. Now they are thinking of using advanced roadmaps, and I know that they might or they most likely will use advanced roadmaps because in this organization, not only they have this event communication planning team, but they have a huge engineering team, and that engineering team is also thinking of using advanced roadmaps. So if we use advanced roadmaps, then we can potentially create this visualization for multiple epics, not just one epic. And that is it. I'll stop here. I think we have 10-15 minutes for any questions and answers. You can type your questions here. I can look at the questions right now and I can try to answer. Okay, so let me just try to pick up some of the questions. How can we copy your link field? Okay, so the question here is, it's from an anonymous user. How can we copy URL link field to a text field? So using automation tools, it doesn't really matter uh, what type of field. You should be able to access that particular field. So it could be a URL link field, and I think I have done that. So as long as there is a field somewhere, you should be able to copy it using smart link and smart value. So it should be possible. So let us take a look at the next question. Which automation platform would you perform this with? Script runner or automation for Jira? What are the factors that make this? It depends answer. Okay. So personally, I would prefer using script runner, but at the same time, it is not always simple and easy because I am, of course, biased when it comes to script runner. The thing is that there are factors like cost. If you're using script runner for Jira, then of course there is a cost involved. If you're using Jira Cloud or if you're using Jira Data Center, then of course things are totally different. If I have to do this on Jira Data Center, and if my client has given me permission to purchase Scriptner, I would definitely go with Scriptner because Scriptner will help you do a lot more. And of course, you can achieve complex business logic automations using Scriptner. But the thing is, because I wanted to show you that yes, if you want to do something similar or something simpler or maybe a bit more complex, you can potentially use automation tools. Automation tools are quite good for these simple use cases. And apart from these two questions, if you have any other question, please feel free to type here in the chat or maybe ask a question here on top. I'm not really sure if it is possible for you to come off mute, but you can definitely type your questions. Shall we wait for a few more minutes, Sarfaraz, for the questions? And by the way, a bit of self-promotion. In case you want to learn more about automation rules, or in case you want to learn more about script runner, I do have hundreds of videos on my YouTube channel. If you go to my YouTube channel, you will find plenty of examples where I have covered uh, automation rules and different use cases. And I do have like a lot of videos on Jira REST API. So using automation rules, you can also make a REST call. And in this particular session of mine, event planning, event communication planning, I didn't really want to mention, I mean, the focus is not really automation. It's more about Jira Cloud in general. But because I was able to solve these problems uh, using nothing but Jira Cloud native capabilities, bit of automation, bit of simple Kanban boards, I thought I'll probably, just show it to you. I think there is one more question. Okay. Yeah, I think it's a good question. Are there any pros and cons of using a combination of JSM and Jira software project types to solve similar problems? I don't really think, I think it's a two, so there are no pros and cons. It's more about what you want to do. For example, if you're using Jira Service Management, then of course you need to create a task or a dev task for the engineering team. And you can do something similar using JSM as well. And good thing about JSM and Jira software is that you can also pass comments as well from one project to another project. But yeah, so it's not really about pros and cons. It's more about your use case. Uh, okay, so if you don't really have any other questions, feel free to think about it and reach out to me. You can find me on LinkedIn. If you search my name on LinkedIn, if you have any questions about automation, script runner, EasyBI, I can potentially help you. All right. Thank you very much. Thanks for your time. Bye bye.